Right, hello. My name's Alice. I am a producer at WinchesterFest, and I am joined today by the wonderful, the fantastic, the champion that is Hannah Ledlie. How are you, Hannah?
Hey, I'm doing well. I've been enjoying the sun today. I went for a long walk, so I'm doing okay. Yeah.
Nice, cool. So yeah, we're just going to learn a little bit more about you and how you work as a writer. So I suppose the first question I can ask is, what got you into poetry and writing?
So I think I came to it quite late because in high school, obviously, we'd look at poems in English and stuff, but I never fully got it or really enjoyed it until when I came to university. I went along to Grizzly Pear, Birmingham's student poetry night, and I saw people in the years above, people in my group, getting up on stage and doing poems that they'd written themselves, and suddenly it like clicked for the first time, and I saw some great Birmingham poets like Jasmine Gardosi and Leon Priestnall doing sets that just blew my mind. So I knew I wanted to give it a go. So I wrote my first spoken word poem and went and did it on the open mic. And then from there, I heard about the Unislam auditions. So I gave it a go. And yeah, it was really Unislam that kept me interested in poetry and kept me trying to write more. Yeah.
Amazing. Cool. So what would you say is more challenging? Do you find it more challenging to write the poetry or to perform it?
Definitely writing it, I would say. I think the performance element has always come slightly more naturally because I went to like drama club in school growing up. I did find it nerve-wracking to begin with. Like my first ever time reading poetry, my hands were literally shaking. You could see the paper quivering and stuff. But it just become easier with time. I still definitely get nervous, but much less so. But the writing is always hard. Like it never gets easier. And I think I'm learning to accept the fact that it will always be difficult, because I think the moment it becomes easy, you're not trying hard enough, really.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah, cool. Now we'll go with that question after this one. Yeah, how would you describe your style of writing, this kind of style of how you write and what you write?
There are definitely some themes that I return to. So like sexuality, dystopia, belonging, and occasionally the environment as well. But as for the style, I do enjoy trying to experiment with my writing and with forms and stuff. But I don't like poetry that's so cryptic and archaic that you just can't get its meaning even after several rereads. So I try and use a little bit of ambiguity, but I want anyone to be able to understand or take at least something from my writing. So I do aim for accessibility as well.
Cool. And how have you find that, like, because I've struggled with it before, being too opaque with messages and being slightly surreal. How have you found finding the line between do you know what I mean? Like, what's that line for you? How did you come to discover it?
I think it's different for every poem. And sometimes I'll accept that I'm writing something and it is kind of just for me. Not many people will understand it. Maybe only my close friends will get something out of it, or only my family will get something out of it. And that's okay. So it really depends on what audience I'm writing for. If I'm writing spoken word, especially like if I'm writing a slam piece, I'm bearing in mind that the audience is only going to hear it once. It's a 3-minute piece, and also they've probably heard 10 other poems right before mine. So I'm focusing more on grabbing their attention, using one sort of realm of imagery, like everything's water related or everything's about one specific journey. But with page poetry, I think there's more room for ambiguity. The reader doesn't necessarily have to get it all in the first read because they can return to it. And it's okay if there are different interpretations and stuff. Yeah.
Cool. So I suppose then really leading off of that, what would you say is your creative process in regards to getting it from like page to stage? So having a really good idea and like first draft of a poem to actually making it into a spoken word performance.
I have a pretty chaotic process. It's different every time really, but generally it starts off with one line or one image or idea that I'll have in my head for days or weeks sometimes, or it will just come to me right then and there and I'll get started. I tend to start by writing on paper because I think when you're on your laptop there's so much like temptation to constantly backspace and look up synonyms and go onto Google and search for rhymes and stuff, which I am guilty of. But on the paper, it's just you and your mind. So that's where I usually start. And then once I've got enough content, I'll then go onto my laptop and I'll start thinking about the ordering. And at that point, I'll usually know whether or not it's specifically like a spoken word poem, or if it's a page poem, or if it's a mix of both. I think with spoken word, obviously, it needs to be a little bit longer, I think. If it's a slam piece, unfortunately, you can't really go up and do a 10-second poem. But yeah, often I'll write at sort of in the middle of the night or in the evenings. I rarely write anything during the day.
Cool. No, I get that. I really get that. Everything happens in the night. How do you overcome writer's block for you?
I think it's weird. I don't tend to get it, or if I do have it, I don't notice because I just do other things. Like if I don't feel like writing, I won't write. It only becomes a problem when I've got a specific deadline coming up and I know I really have to write something for it. But in that case, usually just the sense of pressure will make it happen somehow or other. I definitely find prompts help a lot. I've just joined a sort of poetry Facebook group since the start of like quarantine, and there were daily prompts, and for the first time ever I wrote 5 poems 5 days in a row, because I think not only were the prompts really helpful, but the social pressure is something that really gets me writing. It's probably a bad thing that I rely so much on other people to get me to do things, but I think if I know there is an audience, if I know that there are people that are going to read my work, that does like prompt me to get stuff done. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, I know what you mean about the writing group. It pushes me on as well, because especially when when I haven't done one and I'm like, oh my god, everybody else has done these really cool works about shadows, and I'm like, oh,
exactly,
I haven't been involved. Yeah. All right, what was that? Last question. Do you have any advice for people who are just making their way in the poetry and spoken word scene?
I think definitely everyone always says read more, and I totally agree with that. That will help you a lot. Also listen more. Go to more poetry nights. Just go to as many spoken word nights as you can, and not just open mics. You can also go to great poetry events to see sort of headline features who have been in the scene for years and years, and find your role models really, and learn what you can from them, and also find a community, because I think my writing would not have improved at all if I hadn't found this great group of people who could give me feedback and give me encouragement and everything. So find other people who are interested in what you are, and share work and things like that.
Fantastic. Okay, well, I'll leave you to it, Hannah. Yeah, thank you very much for doing the interview and break a leg.
Great, I'll see you later. Thank you. Great, so I think it's just me now. Hello, everybody. It's so strange just seeing my own face and performing to my webcam, but I will try and make this as smooth and natural as possible. I'm going to start with a series of haiku. Now, if you're involved in like the poetry scene at all right now, you've probably read and heard a lot of quarantine poems, and you might be slightly fed up of them because they are a bit of a grim reminder of our situation. So I'm just going to do one overtly like quarantine themed poem, and then I'll move on to other stuff. So this is a series of haiku about life at the moment. Pots, pans, and applause scatter birds from their branches, a shaken snow globe. My city has shrunk into a village, the park's precious countryside. Next door neighbours are radio stations. I tune in on lonely nights. I repeatedly overestimate how long I can make snacks last. On Skype, I notice my mum wears her wedding ring on a necklace now. Great. So now I'm going to read a poem called Model. For me, it's got a fairly clear message, but sometimes when I've read it to people, they've been a bit confused. So for context, it's basically about the gap between what someone or society expects you to feel about someone or a gender and what you actually feel. So this is called Model. The man on TV is handsome. His jaw is a chalk cliff. His nose is an appropriate size. His eyes are advertisements. I imagine shaking his hand and him having a firm grip learned from an overbearing or unknown father. I imagine speaking with him at some snowballed party and wishing I had a script. I imagine grasping my keys as I pass him in an alleyway, just to be safe. I imagine running a finger along the sand dune slope of his back and feeling nothing but absence. So next I'll do a poem called 30th of March, 1834, which is the date of Anne Walker and Anne Lister's wedding. They obviously got married there were two women who got married at a time when that was near impossible, but they did it as legitimately as they could. And I just can't help, I was thinking about this and I was wondering what it must have felt like to them and if they were aware of how significant it was and how they felt about that. I wonder if they hid themselves from each other before the ceremony, if they kept a veil of tradition where they could. Were the words enough to fill the empty pews? Did they feel something lift as their echo flew about the church? I do. I do. Right, so now I'm going to read a sestina, which I wrote. Basically, it's a poem where you use these 6 end words. Basically, every line ends with one of 6 words, but you have to repeat them in a very specific order. And then at the end of the poem, there are 3 lines where you use all 6 end words in one kind of slam dunk of poetry. And this is about something that I think a lot of young people especially have experienced, but doesn't seem to get talked about very much. It's about sort of returning home when you feel you don't quite feel yourself, and you don't know whether you should sort of admit to that or just try and hide it. So my end words are porcelain, winter, dust, faded or fades, eyes and before. I've changed from warm porcelain to cloud this winter. Required a lot more blusher dust. My blonde streaks have faded with the light, and my eyes seem darker than before. I was a medium before. Now I'm small and fragile like porcelain. When you open the door with bright eyes and let me in, winter follows behind and refuses to fade. He hangs around the corners of my room like dust. You hoovered and dusted the whole house before I arrived. Within days, I fade your handiwork, smash your porcelain. I point a finger at winter, but winter is flawless in your eyes. Even with 20/20 eyes, you can't see he's changed me. I conceal it with dust and powder, but my foundations are shaken by winter. I struggle to get out of bed before noon. I'm rude. I'm not just paler than porcelain. Under my skin, too, I feel things fading. You seem to think it's my decision to fade. You mistake winter for malice in my eyes. Next time, if I polish the porcelain, decorate the tree, give more gifts, dust, maybe I could make up for my misery before it spoils Christmas. But winter always wins. So maybe I should introduce winter to you next year, before he fades into my bedroom, before he brings tears to our eyes. Maybe you'll help me shake off his dust, return my cheeks to warm porcelain. Or maybe the sight of winter in your daughter's eyes will fade the light from yours, shroud your spirits in dust, make things worse than before, break your heart like porcelain. So that was a little bit grim, but this next one is a lot more upbeat. It's about what is basically, I think, my favorite memory ever of all time, which is a little bit sad because it happened so long ago. But it's just this sort of idyllic moment of creating a utopia, or at least that's how I see it. So I wrote this piece about it. It's called Fragile Creatures. The snails were scattered around Janie Rose and Emily's back garden. We peeled them off the grounds like wet gum and stuck them down again, together on the wide path leading up to the house. Problems presented themselves one by one like games, and we solved them. They deserved better than their shell houses, so we found bricks and sticks and built mansions for them to live in. They needed food, obviously, so we made blackberry pies made from blackberries placed on bottle caps, the metal edges perfectly crimped pastry. Some residents became ill, frothing up unpleasantly, so we built a hospital in the suburbs where they could relax. That side of town was hard to access, so a highway was constructed from a plank. The day sprawled out onto the pavement, and we protected the town from passers-by with frantic hands and chalk warning signs. Build me a mansion, please. Feed me blackberries on bottle caps. When I'm alone, build me a city. When I'm sick, walk the plank to reach me. Great, so now I'm going to read a couple of poems from my pamphlet thing, which I've been working on for about 2 years now. Hopefully it will one day see the light of day. But basically for ages now, I've been fascinated with Newspeak, which is George Orwell's fictional language, which he created for 1984. Basically, it's a language which is designed to restrict people's vocabularies and therefore restrict their capacity to even think rebellious thoughts. And in his sort of essay about Newspeak at the end of 1984, in the appendix, he writes that Newspeak will overtake old speak or normal English by the year 2050. And I found it so interesting that that's still in the future for us even now. So I've set this pamphlet in the years approaching 2050 as the last of normal English is being wiped out. And in order to ensure that transition, the government has dispatched one fluent new speaker to each household. And so through a series of poems and bits of stage play, I try and tell this love story between one of the fluent new speakers and this woman who lives in a women's hostel. And this poem here that I'm about to read, it takes place just after the two characters have met for the first time and then sort of retired to their separate rooms. And it's called Don't Think of a White Bear. Resting at the foot of a small snowdrift, pressing its warmth into the curve of cold with its left side, blinking double lids over black pebble eyes. No, don't think of it. If you must, think only of the blood drying on its claws. Think of its mouth as an arsenal. Think of its violence. Think of it shot and stuffed and lifeless. Don't think of her resting amongst the white sheets of snow, just over there. And next I will read another poem from that sort of collection thing. It's called Playing 1984. We can pretend we're in different rooms. If I look at the meat and you the knives. Who shall claim the window's crescent moon? We must keep separate beds for our eyes. Look at the apples or the pears. Stare at my shadow or my shoes. It takes effort to always be elsewhere. Every silence sounds a little like you. Sometimes two girls ignoring each other cancels out into a kind of vision, unspeakably greater than big brothers. We can lie together in omission. Meet me in the place where there is darkness, and we shall become the other's artist. Okay, so moving on from the dystopia, I'm gonna do a poem about something which I think is a universal experience for any woman who has played pool in a public place. So it's called Komodo Dragons. The man passively aggressively places a pound coin on the side of our pool table, then retreats to the bar. He and his friends watch us like Komodo dragons, waiting for their poison to take hold. But we refuse to die. Time after time, the cue slips and sure thing shots are miraculously missed. The dragons roll their 8-ball eyes as we pop the white for the 6th time and our game is kept alive. We downsiders and laugh as the dragons advance and with flailing limbs pantomime correct technique. We smile and thank them for their advice and proceed to foul 5 times in a row. We are so unbelievably bad. It's like a god has intervened just to teach these creatures patience. Cool. So now I'm going to read 2 of my slightly more wankery poems. This first one is written in 2 vertical columns, which you can read individually, or you can read them. You can read it all horizontally together, and it becomes a sort of 3rd poem. So I'll read it one by one first, and then I'll put it all together. And it's about my brother, Max. If you're watching this, Max, hello. Okay. Often we forget how old we've grown. Adulthood feels as though it will end before the sun sets. In our memories, we hear a call, just before dark, summoning us both home. And then 2. How long it's been since we've both been home. It's a game of snap. Our schedules match only rarely, yet every day we connect and remember the bright days. Siblings have the power of the past and returning to it. Often we forget how long it's been, how old we've grown since we've both been home. Adulthood feels as though it's a game of snap. It will end before our schedules match. The sun sets only rarely in our memories. Yet every day we hear a call. We connect and just remember the bright days before dark. Siblings have the power of summoning the past and returning us both home to it. So if that was a sort of 3-in-1 poem, this next piece is a 4-in-1 poem because it's a triptych. So there are 3 vertical columns, which you can read individually, or again, you can put them together. This is a sort of response to a comment by Andrea Ledlie, the Conservative politician, in reference to LGBT education in Birmingham. She said, parents should be able to choose whether or not their children are exposed to that kind of information. And an interesting choice of words. This is a triptych for Andrea. 1. Exposed is a bare hand, open inside a woman proclaiming no sound, or a kiss shared outside when there is no sign there will be sun. This kind of exposure, they die for it. 2. Naked word, demanding the cover of papers. Love is a dirty impression on an empty corner of a textbook. It will scroll itself defiantly on. It will not be erased, I'm telling you. 3. Attention and repulsion. They're the same thing and can leave pupils confused and questioning, can leave them afraid to explain their desire. But young eyes eventually look at what they want, the truth. Exposed is a naked word, demanding attention and repulsion. Bare hand, open the cover of papers. They're the same inside. A woman proclaiming love is a dirty thing and can leave no sound or impression on pupils confused and questioning. A kiss shared outside an empty corner can leave them afraid when there is no sign of a textbook to explain their desire. But there will be sun. It will scroll itself defiantly on young eyes eventually. This kind of exposure, it will not be erased. Look at what they want. They die for it. I'm telling you the truth. So next I'm going to do a poem which is about a job that I briefly had. I probably make it out to be a lot worse than it actually was. But anyway, here we go. This job is again and again. Good morning. You're through to the again office. Again speaking. How again I help? This job is an education in uncaring. Time is marked only by the lights turning off when I haven't moved from my chair in several agains. I throw a hand in the air like I just don't care, and the lights again. Again evening, you're through to the again. Hannah again. How can I again? How can I again? The same questions again. Again the script, click of phone again in the handset. And up and down the country again. Commuters blend into again-shaped desks. Schools bend boys into again-shaped men. Cleaners mend again-reeking scents. Sometimes it seems the again will never end. But there is a cleaner with ballerina dreams. Alone on a hotel balcony, she plies to reach the relic of a cigarette, then pirouettes again. again. And there is a boy who plays pretend. At break, he makes dents with his friends. Snapping sticks instead of tempers, they create something better again, again. And there is a commuter with a phone cord wrapped around her wrist. And she listens again, again, until on a good day, on the other end, someone invents their own phonetic alphabet. A postcode becomes lampshade elephant 4, 9 sofa bookshop, or coffee violin 3, 2 underwear thorn. And suddenly there is poetry. Apple garden, apple inkwell newborn. Right, so earlier on I did a slightly sad poem about mental health. Basically I was really struggling in my final year of university, so I went along to welfare and they said, we can't really offer you counselling, at least not for 6 months, but we can offer you badminton. So this is called Mental Health Badminton Club. We spent our last words getting here. Now the only currency is motion, and we are richer than we thought. Our bodies surprise us with the swiftness shuttles demand, and strength unlodges itself to let shots fly to the back line. A misstep, a missed hit, a trip. We find laughter like a coin beneath a sofa. Precious, for how long it's been there, waiting. Okay, so next I'm going to do a piece that's not even really a poem, it's more like a cry for help. So basically, I really like this girl, but I don't know if she likes me back. So I've written down a list of things that she's done that makes me think maybe she feels the same way, but I don't know. So later on in the comments or something, let me know what you think, if I'm just overthinking it or not. Okay, so the first thing was, when our cruise ship sank, she gave me all the space on our piece of debris and slipped into the icy embrace of the sea so that I might survive. But I feel like she just did it to be polite. 2, she stood outside my window one night and played a love song through a boombox, but maybe she's just really proud about owning a boombox in 2020. 3, once we were in the kitchen and she ate the other end of my piece of spaghetti until our lips met, but she'd skipped breakfast and was really hungry, so that could explain it. 4, she sung Can't Take My Eyes Off You in front of an entire stadium of school children, but it was probably for a dare. 5, she tied me to her kitchen chair after the spaghetti incident, broke my throne and cut my hair, and from my lips she drew the hallelujah. But I think it was just like platonic flirting. 6, one time she sprinted through an airport and risked being tasered and subjected to hours of police interrogation to stop me from moving country. But she is a bit of an adrenaline junkie. 7, after I got absolutely wasted at grad ball and left one of my shoes behind, she went around the whole of Brum trying to find out who it belonged to. But she probably just had nothing better to do. 8, she turned up at my house on Christmas Day and declared love through a series of cards. But she has really got into performance art lately. And then finally, 9, she asked me to marry her. Now we live in a cottage by the sea. But I guess I'll never know how she really feels about me. So yeah, if you've got any ideas, just let me know, because I'm a bit clueless, to be honest. Okay, that was the dumbest thing I've ever written. I'm now going to do a piece. Again, it's not very poemy for a poem. Basically, it's inspired by the Twitter game where somebody posts a starter phrase, which you have to type into your phone, and then you let predictive text take over and complete the sentence for you. And it's a funny game because it reveals your most used words, which is funny because it reveals something about your character, I think, in a way that's funny and also a little bit unnerving. And this piece, it really works better as like a duo poem with two different voices, but obviously it's just me, so I have recorded other parts on my phone. Hopefully this will work okay. Okay. It's called Prophecy. You can do this thing on your phone where you type a few words, then use predictive text to get to the app, and then click on the event, and then click on the event, and then click on the event, and then click on the event. It's the most revealing and unintelligible personality test there is. But I don't know how to do it. But I think it's because I don't know how to do it. But I just thought it was a good time to fix it. And then I'll send it to you later. I just wish it worked better so my poems could write themselves. Or maybe I'll be sure to meet you guys at the house party. Or maybe we can go to get some lunch. Or maybe I'll try to get to the house party at the house. Perhaps in the future, I'll be able to switch my mind entirely to autopilot. And then I'll send it to you, and I will be happy to. But I feel like I don't want to go to the point where I just feel like I want to be a good person. Things would be so much easier if I didn't have to think. I wouldn't have to figure out how to write about a world where everything is falling. Apart from the fact I'm sorry I can't make it to the house party at the house, and I don't know how to get to the app and fix it, and then click on the event, and then click on the lunch, and I don't know how to fix anything, but I just want to be a good person. And so maybe I'll just go to the house party and get drunk out of my mind, or maybe we can go to get some lunch, or maybe I'll try to send it to you later and I will be happy to, but I just thought it was a good time to click on the event, and then I'll get to the app and I don't know how to do it, but I just thought I'm good, I can, and then click on the make it, and I feel like I'm sorry, I can't. I will write about a world where everything is autopilot. There we go. Don't know if that worked at all. But anyway, that brings me to my final poem. Thank you so much, Alice and Connor and the whole team for having me. I think WinchesterFest is like a really great resource for so many people who are missing poetry, and even for people who haven't really enjoyed poetry before, that it's somewhere that's really accessible. So I'm really glad I've got to be a part of this. I'll leave you on a poem which is slightly bittersweet. It's about when you find a group of people who really get you and who you enjoy spending time with, but you kind of know that you can't always be together. It's called When My People Leave. I will become a crowd again, untalented, unfunny, understood incorrectly. How will I explain the throng of myself to strangers? Anecdote, arm touch, eye roll, in joke. Only when my people leave will I realize we were speaking another language. Like only noticing night's fallen when someone asks why you're sitting in darkness. Thanks so much. I believe somebody is going to shut this off now, so I'll say goodbye. Thank you.